She's very ill. Please pray for her to get better. And asked me if I would come play this morning, and I said I would be honored and delighted to come back. So I started thinking about special music, and I started flipping through the hymnal, and I thought of the weather that we have suffered or enjoyed, however you choose to look at it, for the past week. So I picked a song, and it is a Baptist song, be prepared, that made me happier about this weather.
Got warmer in here by about 10 degrees. One of the interesting things about the changes that I've seen over the years as I've done music ministry and I've been in pastoral ministry is what the internet provides to all of us. And I don't care what you are or who you are or what you do, the internet has just changed our lives. And since Thanksgiving, the stories and the things that I have gotten on various ministerial and religious websites and everything, some of them are so good, and some of them are like everything else on the internet. You just look at it, cluck, and think, where did that come from? But one story that came across early in Advent, was from a preacher who told the story about his church, like the second week in Advent, was right in the middle of their children's pageant. And this was a big church that had large numbers of children. And right in the middle of the pageant, one of the older gentlemen, one of the backbones of the church, jumped up and stomped right down the center aisle, right out the back door of the church, right in the middle of the play. Well, the pastor was very concerned. He couldn't figure out what was going on, so he very quietly got up, went out the side door, and he caught up with the gentleman out in the parking lot, and he asked him, he said, Sir, what is wrong? And the old man said to him, Preacher, I've gone along with a whole lot of changes in this church over a whole lot of years, but this bit tonight was just more than I can deal with. The preacher said, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? What are you talking about this bit tonight? And the older gentleman said, who ever heard of the three wise men walking up to the manger, to the baby Jesus, and presenting their gifts to him? Gifts of Amazon gift cards. And, we all have seen a whole lot of changes over the years. I've seen tons, and I'm as old, we're all pretty much in this boat together, except for these two down here. Anyway, But, some things haven't changed. And the basic reason and purpose of Christmas is like I said about the table. It has not changed one bit. The characters are the same. And the characters of Christmas as God's gift to humanity will always stay the same. Now, over centuries, mankind, along with retail, have done our best to mangle the story of Christmas. We tried to twist it and distort it and to turn it into something that allows us to make a buck. Now, as Christmas begins to end up, we try to store it away with all of the decorations. But Christmas is like that star in the east, and it's always, always, always going to be there, guiding us back to the central purpose of Christmas. And that purpose is salvation. Salvation through God's unconditional love that we received wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying there in that manger. That's what those wise men were seeking. And through that innocent baby who came as one of us, and yet he was one with God, God was seeking each one of us. Now it's interesting, as well as we know this story, how many of the Gospels tell the story of the wise men? Anybody tell me real quickly? Only one. Only Matthew tells the story of the visit of the Magi. Or maybe you want to call them kings. Or maybe you want to call them wise men from the east. Doesn't make any difference. These characters of the familiar Christmas story don't really seem to fit into Luke's narration. Mark doesn't even bother with it. And John gives us his slant that's much different. But the question we have is, who were they? Who are these guys that we give the number 3 to, but that's really just out of tradition. And we give them names of Melchior, or Balthazar, or Gaspar, which has been anglicized to Casper. And every time I see Casper, all I think of is the friendly ghost. But we've given, and tradition has given all of this that we really don't have factual info for. How far did they travel? Why were they there? These are questions that theologians and preachers have pondered for years. The scholars from the very beginning don't really know. And there's a lot of speculation, and George touched on that in his thing a minute ago. That's why we have so many different titles for these characters. Wise men, magi, kings, whatever. But the various titles that we find, in part, sort of, in a small way, defines what that particular translation, and this is what you need to grab hold of, what that particular translation assumes about these visitors. So let's look at the passage this morning that comes from Matthew, the 2nd chapter, verses 1 through 12. Now, I am reading from the New King James Version, which is probably pretty close to what we are the most familiar. Hear the words out of Matthew. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where that Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, or by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. And then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying to them, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. And on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. And then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. We may not know a whole lot of factual truth, something that we can touch and know for sure is true about the birth of Christ. But we know from the story that there are certain things about their character, and there are certain things about the character of Christmas that we can be sure of. So while there are a lot of things, there are a whole lot of things that the wise men or the magi or the kings or whatever you want to call them can teach us, I want to bring up two very quickly today for us to kind of think about, us to kind of chew on, and maybe take it home with us. First of all, what did the wise men do? The wise men came for one purpose, and that was to seek Jesus. That's what the Bible tells us. The wise men sought Jesus. That was their sole purpose. Their sole purpose in this part of the story of Christ. The wise men came for one thing only, and that was to find the baby. I read a neat story about a little boy who was 3 or 4 years old. And his mother and father went out and bought a wooden nativity set. Now, they bought wooden rather than ceramic because how careful do you think a 3 or 4-year-old little boy is going to be? How apt is that youngster to break a wing off the angel, an ear off the donkey? You know, this is for a 3-year-old little boy. And they got this nativity set so that he could play with it. He could be intimate with it. He could touch it and shake it and hold it and feel it. And if he wanted to, put it close to him and one of those characters become his lovey. They bought a wooden one that even though it was hard and it was cold, it wasn't going to break. And it was going to last. And he could play with it and have a good time with it. And the little boy sat there in wide-eyed wonder and wide-eyed amazement as his mother and daddy took the characters out of the box and would hold them up one by one and tell him the story that went along with each one of those characters. And then that family, mother, daddy, and young lad, 4 or 3 years old, began putting the creche together. And it was a very solemn procedure. They placed each one of the characters, Mary and Joseph and the wise men and the angels and the shepherds and all of them, they placed them until they got them at exactly the right angle so you could see all of the characters. Well, the next day, the mom came in and every bit of it had been totally rearranged. And that was okay. She knew that the little boy was fascinated with it. And she knew that he liked touching it. And she knew that that tactile familiarity would help him to remember some of what they